It's Saturday, June 20th, 2026. It's the start of summer this weekend. It's also Father's Day weekend, so I want to wish a happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. My name is Bob Jex, former Fast Team Program Manager, now volunteering with the Florida Aviation Network. It's my honor today, high honor today, to bring in a well-known aviation attorney. We'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. His name is Pat Phillips, and you'll get to know him over the next hour. I really look forward to that interview. But a couple of programming notes before we get started. I want to welcome everybody. Settle in, grab a cup of joe, make yourselves comfortable at home or wherever you're watching from. Today's programming is worth Wings Knowledge Credit. If you need a flight review, and all of us pilots do need flight reviews, this is one great way to move the ball down the field towards your flight review. You'll be earning Wings Knowledge Credits for today's sessions. We're broadcasting live and in the clear from the Gizmo Productions USA studios in Orlando, Florida. We're coming to you on Facebook as well. You can watch us on Facebook. We broadcast year-round, several events per year, including Sun and Fun, and we're looking forward to doing additional programming throughout the year. Today is Plane Time 33. We'll be doing this section in 3 segments. The first 2 segments I'll be with our guest, Pat Phillips. We start now, and then we'll take a little break at the top of the hour. Then after the second segment, we'll bring on George Bartuska, our weather guy, to talk about the summer season of thunderstorms and all the bad weather that occurs in a thunderstorm and how to avoid it. So today it's all about risk management and making your flying safer. All of our team of volunteers is all about making your flying safer. So we want to make that better. Let us know how we're doing. My contact information will be showing at the end of the video or at the end of the stream, and you can contact me for Wings credit so that you don't miss out. We'll only be able to do the live Wings credit for today. If you're watching the rebroadcast later, it may be too late for you to get Wings credit, but we're happy to provide it to the live audience today. With that, I want to bring on our guest, aviation attorney of considerable renown, Pat Phillips, now a recent inductee into the Florida Aviation Hall of Fame. Pat, welcome to our studio and welcome to Plane Time. It's very great to have you. What this guy forgets about aviation would fill volumes. He's great at what he does. If you ever need an aviation attorney, please consider Pat Phillips as your lead man for everything that's going on in aviation law. Pat, it's great to have you here. The audience doesn't know you. We want to get to know you in the next few minutes with us today. How in the world did you come to be inducted into the Aviation Hall of Fame for the state of Florida?
Well, that's kind of a long story, but again, first I want to thank you, Bob, for that introduction, and hope you're not disappointed today. And thank you for Obie and the and I see my friend Rich Spoler out there and Laura out there and all the other folks that we've worked with for years in the aviation world. Again, it's great to be here with everybody, see everybody, and be able to talk about my favorite subject, airplanes.
I love it. I love it. Pat, you've got a tremendous resume. It almost watered my eyes reading through it. You've been in the military. You've been active on the civil side. Your accolades in the legal profession would fill volumes. Your aviation community service is commendable. It's wonderful. How did you get your start in aviation?
Well, you say, how did I get my start in aviation? Well, my whole life, we've pretty much been immersed in aviation since I was young. In fact, my grandfather was a pilot back in the 30s, and my grandfather had the distinction of seeing the first airplane fly in the state of Florida. And that was when Glenn Curtis came to Orlando, and the first flight of an airplane was in 1910, February 1910, and it was at the Orlando Fairgrounds, and my grandfather was there and witnessed the flight, and he talked about that his whole life, and he had an Aeronica C-3 in the early 30s, mid-30s, and that was his favorite airplane that he flew around at the time. My dad was a pilot. My dad was a in fact, my dad was a flight instructor in Stearman aircraft at the beginning of World War II, and that was the time I was born. He was flight instructing in the Stearman. in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and then he went on later to fly the hump. So we had always enjoyed and appreciated the stories of flying the hump. And I had uncles that were involved in aviation, so the family was always involved in aviation. And our holiday dinner table conversation was pretty much all about airplanes and aviation. So, it's just part of our family, and it's always been my life.
And you've got a lifelong love affair going with a lot of vintage aircraft. We'll get to that in a few minutes. On the Florida Aviation Hall of Fame, most people haven't heard about it. Does that come with any special privileges or special honors? Are there any obligations that come with being an inductee into that really rarefied atmosphere of exceptionally gifted and qualified pilots who've done so much in aviation?
That's kind of a would require several answers, but the Florida Aviation Hall of Fame, I think the distinction is it's in fact, I was talking to a fellow yesterday at a meeting I was attending. He was getting inducted into the Parachute Hall of Fame, and he hit me with something I hadn't thought about. It was neat because you leave a legacy, because your picture and your name will be there as long as we're here. And that's kind of the neat part, that you will be remembered, and that it will be put in a prominent location where it continues. Now, you mentioned obligations. I haven't run across any obligations, at least that I'm real concerned about right now, but I think the obligation is to be a good representative and a good ambassador for aviation, and promote aviation, and keep people aware of aviation and all the neat things involved in aviation. It is neat. It's just cool to be around airplanes. Airplane people are our favorite people to be around, and it's just all part of it.
It's wonderful to know somebody who's in the Hall of Fame. The late Ron Timmermans, a volunteer with us, was in the Flight Instructors Hall of Fame.
Yes, he was.
You've been around aviation for many, many years, and there are 50-year awards that come with the territory. You've been an instructor for 50 years.
Yes,
You've
sure
been a pilot for longer than that. I wanted to ask you a little bit about how the business has changed in terms of things like the way we get information to go flying, risk management, the things that people have to pay attention to. It's all changing. Everything is in flux. How do you see that changing in your profession?
Oh, you're talking about the aviation world?
Aviation, yeah.
Oh, it's definitely a different world today. I soloed back in 1959, and that was back in the days that after about 6 hours, you're pretty well expected to solo, because I do remember soloing at 6 hours, and then going back, flying a couple of times, and then going back with 8 hours, soloing some more. And once you were soloed, you pretty well go out and rent the airplane, and the neat thing about it, you didn't have to pay for the instructor, and go out there and start flying and building flying time. And that was kind of my goal to push. I was trying to get as much flying time as I could as a young person. And I noticed we see a picture up here of a Veronica 7AC. That picture was taken at Vandenberg Airport in Tampa, and that was when you could rent a Veronica 7AC wet with gas for $8 an hour. And I used to, when I was in junior college at that time, I'd go get my friends together, and if I was lucky, they'd pay for the flight just to go for an airplane ride, or we'd split it. Most of the time we'd split. I'd pay half, they'd pay half. And there's a tri-pacer who was doing the same thing. This picture, I was probably 18 years old at that time. I was a tri-pacer again, was flying around with my friends. We were all splitting the rental of the airplane, and enjoying flying and building flying time. This was obviously all after I got my private license when I was 17. But again, that's just kind of the neat things about airplanes and aviation. And get your friends together, and you all have something to talk about and something to do together, and it's a new experience for them, and at the same time try to encourage them to get into the aviation world.
You've had a love affair with vintage aircraft. You've restored 3 Stearmans. You've restored a J3 Cub, if I remember correctly, and actually won an award at Sun and Fun for that restoration. Tell us a little bit about your restoration projects.
Yes, that is true. Well, when I was a little kid in the airport, going back to 15, 16, I always loved a Stearman. I always wanted to have a Stearman, but couldn't afford to buy one. I remember when I was first looking at Stearmans, they were $8,000. You could buy one, then they got up to $12,000, and that was way out of sight. But I really wanted a Stearman, so I found out the way to get a Stearman. I started this project after my first Stearman restoration project, or after I got back from Vietnam. I still wanted a Stearman, and that was about the time Stearmans were being retired from the crop duster strip. So I went to crop duster strip, bought an old duster that had been retired, and I started buying a piece at a time. The first piece I bought was an aileron. So I brought the aileron home and did a total restoration on the aileron. That meant totally sandblasting, cleaning it up, priming it, putting anything in it new that needed to be put in, and then covering it. And covered it all the way up through silver. Then go buy an elevator, and then bought a rudder. And I did this over a period of 7 years, and after 7 years, you got a brand new airplane with all new nuts and bolts in it, every cable, every bearings put in it, brand new, engine overhauled. And it took about 6, 7 years, but at the end of the time, you got a whole airplane, it's paid for. So that was the way I was able to afford to get a Stearman, was putting it together a piece at a time and just go as I paid for it. And I've told a lot of people that if you want an airplane, that's one way to do it. Just if you restore one yourself, and when you're finished, it's paid for. So you might as well be putting the money in the airplane rather than putting it in the bank if you borrowed the money. So that was my deal on storing the Stearman. Did 3 of them that way, and also pretty well my Cub, I bought a whole Cub that was a basket case, and I was amazed. I found out the Cub was much more difficult to restore, a lot more to it, a lot more detail, a lot more intricacies to it than the Stearman. Cub's got interior fabric, which you don't have on the Stearman. The Stearman's a modern airplane, and it's really designed for, it's mechanic friendly, where you just attach the fabric real easy. It's got attach points for the fabric, which the Cub really doesn't have. So it's a lot of detail, a lot of attention to detail that you have to pay attention to on the Cub, and it actually takes longer than it does to restore a Stearman. At least that was my experience.
It's got to be immensely satisfying getting a basket case, as you said, back into the air.
Oh yeah, that's one of the best parts of it. I'd say best parts. That's I should have mentioned that. You've got the pride of what you did and putting it together. When I'm talking about putting it together, I'm talking about doing all the work myself. And
is this something that young people who are looking for a career in aviation could somehow get involved in? If they find somebody that's doing something like that, to look over the shoulder of somebody like the great Pat Phillips and to see what they're doing and learn the profession? Well,
I don't know about the great Pat Phillips part, but the other part, yes, it is. I've had a lot of kids, a lot of young kids and people come in and work and help. You find out everybody wants to help when you restore an airplane. And you can gather them around and get the help, and they're learning, and I've seen several people motivated to go on and become A&P mechanics from working on as a young person on an airplane project we're working on. In fact, it encouraged me to get my A&P after I finished my second Stearman. I said, it's time to go get an A&P, and I worked on the A&P and self-studied and took the test and got my A&P, which I've been proud of being an A&P mechanic and relating to folks that are in the maintenance world.
When you started talking about restoring the Stearman from its components, it reminded me of a funny song by Johnny Cash where he talks about stealing a Jeep part by part and shipping it home. But you did it legally.
Yes.
You did it legally. And Johnny Cash wasn't able to avoid the lawyers. You became a lawyer. Tell us a little bit about your legal career.
Oh, I say, I even got bill of sales for each part I would buy usually. So, okay, I think you asked me the question, how did I become a lawyer?
How did you become a lawyer?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story, but surprisingly, back in as early as elementary school, I'd argue with a teacher about something, question a teacher about something, and they'd all tell me I should be a lawyer. And I got the same response all the way through high school. And then I got into high school, several teachers said I started taking them serious. And then when I got to the University of Florida, I had one professor particularly, he was an attorney, and he was really telling me I needed to be a lawyer, and so I decided, well, I needed to be a lawyer. So I was in my senior year at University of Florida. I had my commercial license and my flight instructor certificate, and I was flight instructing my senior year at Stengel Field. It was a grass field near University of Florida, which is no longer there. Shopping center's there, unfortunately, and also at the Gainesville Airport. And I'd taken a test. I was getting ready to go to law school. I was accepted at the University of Florida Law School. Graduated, and I was going to law school. And my vantage point, my perspective was I felt fortunate. The Vietnam War came along. One day somebody at the fraternity house said, hey, you can go to the local Air Force recruiter's office, go take the test. If you pass it, you can go to pilot training. Well, I couldn't wait to run down and talk to the recruiter about that. And so I ran down the recruiter. I took the test for both the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy, passed them all, and I said, I'm going to be So I made up my mind, I'm going to go be an Air Force pilot. I'm going to put law school on hold. And I've always been a history buff, and I'd been studying Vietnam. I was curious what was going on in Vietnam, and me with my curiosity, I wanted to go see what it was all about. And especially if you, it was kind of interesting when again, my senior year of law school, the Army landed a Caribou. A lot of people don't know what a Caribou is. Caribou looks like a small C-123, small C-120, or a C-123 looks kind of like a C-130.
We've got a picture of the deck here of a C-7 Caribou.
Oh,
there is one. Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's a small twin-engine airplane. It's got Pratt & Whitney R2000 engine in it. A recip burns avgas. And when I got out of pilot training, I got an assignment in F4, and about a week before graduation. Nice. Oh, here's a picture of a Caribou. That's an Army Caribou, but that'll work. About a week before graduating from pilot training, like I said, I was ready to go be an F4 pilot, but then what made an announcement that the Air Force had just taken the Caribou from the Army and acquired the Caribou, and anybody wanted to go fly Caribou, just say you do. And so naturally, did want to go fly Caribous. I think I was the only one in my class because I was the only one that knew what one was, because I'd seen it land in the ROTC field at University of Florida. So went straight to Vietnam after graduating from pilot training. Less than 2 months later, I was in Vietnam, and I call it the best flying job in all Vietnam because it was almost all daylight VFR, and we would carry loads of cargo from the main Air Force bases like Tan Son Nhut or Bien Hoa, take it out to the Special Forces camps that lined the Cambodian border. So you just take the load out to the camp, and we'd land on, most of the fields we landed on were dirt, clay, grass, unimproved fields. So that was just kind of like what I was used to, flying around daylight, VFR, landing on unimproved fields. You drop your load, and if that person from the Special Forces camp had something they wanted to go somewhere else, they'd say, hey, we got a load of people, take somewhere else. And that's what's a neat thing about, I upgraded aircraft commander in about 2 months. And it was kind of like having your own airplane. The aircraft commander could make the decision to take the next load to where that camp went. You'd call command post after you took off, tell them how many people you had and where you were going, and you do it. And so that's why I thought that was kind of neat, because the aircraft commander, the airplane, the pilot, could make your own decisions. And so you do that all day long. So that's what made it a great flying job. And yes, we'd get shot at once in a while, and we'd get shot up once in a while, but it was usually always in the back of the airplane. And as long as the hydraulic pressure was still good and there was no adverse effect, you'd finish the mission that day, and you'd get back to when you land back at your home base, which ours was Vung Tau, you'd report it, and the maintenance people take a look at it, and the maintenance people patch it up that night, and the airplane would be ready to go the next day. So that's kind of what flying the Caribou was all about.
Nothing good lasts forever, but that sounded like a pretty good gig. And then later you got involved in the C-141.
Oh, it was, yeah. I got 876 combat hours flying the Caribou like that. And that's because I guess I like to fly, and I volunteered for more than my fair share of missions, so that's how the time got. I mean, like I said, that was the neat thing about it. You could fly as much as you wanted to volunteer for and fly. So you can see that year I spent most of it flying and volunteering for some pretty neat missions.
Tell us about the C-141.
Okay, after finishing Vietnam, I asked for it. It was a C-141 assignment, because I'm still thinking when my 5-year obligation is finished, I'm going to go back to law school. So I've still got law school in mind. So got assigned to C-141, went to Altus Air Force Base, checked out in the C-141, which was a neat as we see the picture of it here, neat 4-engine jet transport. And that was the primary transport of the Air Force at that time. It was a fairly new airplane. And in fact, some of them were brand new right off the Lockheed factory from Marietta, Georgia. They got to fly some fairly new airplanes. But we flew that airplane in that was another great, wonderful flying experience, because we got to fly into all the airports you could pretty much get the airplane into in the free world. And literally was getting around the world 2 times a month in the airplane. Usually you'd go east first couple of weeks and be flying around the European areas, and then try to go east and go fly into Vietnam. So I tried to get a trip into Vietnam at least once a month, because you got your combat pay, you got all the benefits of you being in combat, and like I say, especially the pay and the other things that you'd get for flying in there. So you'd go in there and back, and it'd take about 5 days to make the round trip. Leave Robbins Air Force Base, go to Anchorage, Alaska, Tokyo, to Tonsanut, and Tonsanut back to Okinawa, and then back to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska, and back to Robbins Air Force Base. And that's where you really kind of learn about the Great Circle Route, because it seemed funny. You take off, you're going to Tokyo, Japan, take off from Robbins Air Force Base and fly to Elmendorf, which is in Anchorage, Alaska. So that's going northwest. Elmendorf is pretty far north, but then you go from Elmendorf to Tokyo, and then you're going back southwest. But if you put a string across that globe, it's a straight line to Tokyo going up over Alaska. So that's where that was really made a real impression on what the Great Circle route was all about and what it meant. But again, that was another great flying experience. Got about 3,500 hours in the C-141, and was also an instructor and a flight examiner on the airplane. So, and I thought it was kind of neat, because I like flight instructing. As I said, I was flight instructor when I was at the University of Florida, and flight instructing in the C-141 was just like flight instructing in a Cessna 172. Same process, procedure, touch and goes, fly around, do instrument approaches for several hours, just same as we did it in general aviation. And that's what I was kind of impressed with the Air Force. Hey, it's not any different what we were doing in general aviation.
As an Orlando native, you've been part of the local aviation scene around here your whole life, really. And I think we've picked up on that during your discussion here. One of the things that has always impressed me about you, and I've known you for about 15 years, is, and I'll say this to anybody, if there's something going on in the local aviation scene, like, for example, putting up that F4 on a stick on the southwest corner of Orlando Executive Airport, you can bet your bottom dollar that Pat Phillips is pretty close to the middle of that project. And sure enough, tell us about that F4 project of putting that up on that pedestal there.
That's a good question, especially since most people are familiar with the F4. And then here's a picture of Joe Kittinger that it was
Joe
put up there
Kittinger,
from
yep,
Joe
the late
Kittinger.
Joe Kittinger.
Yeah, we were. That story started one night. We were having dinner with Joe Kittinger at La Cantina, and my wife Barbara came up with the idea. Joe gives her credit for the original idea of the F4. So, Joe, you need an F4. We need F4 on a pedestal somewhere. And we kept talking about Joe Kittinger Park, because Joe Kittinger Park was already there on the southwest side of Orlando Executive Airport, and that would be the great place to put it. So we got talking about it, and then lo and behold, I ended up being the chairman of the project. And that
no
was
surprise, really, no surprise.
That was about a 3.5 year project. By the time we, learned a lot about it, to get an F4, find out that the National Aviation Museum in Dayton, Ohio, owns the airplane, and you have it on loan from them. So we had to go through the process of getting an airplane, finding an F4, and that took about a year just to locate one. And we finally located it, and then you got to arrange for all the hauling and the carrying, and you got to pay for all of this. And so we had several fundraisers, big fundraisers. The first big one we had at La Cantina. We made enough money on the first fundraiser, like Joe and all the folks on our committee say, hey, we got enough money now to pay for the transportation, go pick it up and get it back to Orlando. So we had it hauled back, and then we put it in one of the Showalter, one of those, used to be one of those open tent hangars, fabric hangars, put it in there, and it's like doing a restoration. And Delta, we had some Delta maintenance folks that volunteered that had worked on F4s when they were in the military, really just did an unbelievable job restoring the whole airplane to get it back looking like it looks now. And it is a lot of work. Just, I guess, as an aside, with the F4 is a big, heavy airplane. This F4 everything was stripped out of the airplane, and we had to do a weight and balance on the airplane for the engineers for the pedestal. So we were taking bets on what they think the airplane weighed. I don't know, Bob, you'd have a guess.
Not a clue.
It's all stripped down. Well, most people, I was kind of one of the ones guessing maybe 10,000 pounds, just because we were all around. Well, it ended up weighed about 19,000 pounds. So it just shows you how heavy the airplane was, and that was with everything stripped out. So that was probably, to me, I thought that was kind of a neat aside. But
well, that particular F4 has a, in the Navy we call it a bureau number. It's got a serial number.
Yes.
That apparently Colonel Joe said, hey, I flew that aircraft.
He
flew it in combat, and he flew it in Germany later.
Well, it's got a serial number you won't forget. It's 747. And so, yeah, Joe did go back and has looked back at records, and he'd flown it about on three different occasions. So that even made it more special. But the F4, we had to create a corporation with the F4 in our corporation, and the corporation owned the F4, and we had the responsibility of maintaining the F4. But prior to Joe passing away, the city of Orlando was gracious enough to take the project over, and we were able to turn the whole project over to them, and with some money in the bank to help maintain the airplane. So now the city of Orlando is doing a great job maintaining it. But you've got a lot of entities involved. The city of Orlando, and you got GOA involved, you got the county involved, plus believe it or not, the FAA also gets involved in it. So
Pat,
you've got a lot of agencies to coordinate.
I'm having so much fun interviewing you. We're gonna take a break about 15 minutes and come back. And when we come back, I'm going to get a little bit inside your head. Your philosophies, your approach to aviation safety, your aeronautical decision making, and risk management philosophies, and how you apply those processes. This is Bob Jex, pausing for just a few minutes with the Florida Aviation Network. We'll be back at 9:45 or 10:15, sorry, and we'll pick up with segment 2 with the great Pat Phillips. See you then.